Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this tutorial I would like to show y'all how I made this pendant, which is super blurry. There we go. Now this technique is being shown wrapping a D20, but you could use it on a marble, on a tumbled gemstone, just about anything that you can find that is undrilled. You could wrap something drilled too, but it does not require a drilled hole. And that is three-dimensional. It does a really good job of kind of wrapping rounder pieces. So let's get started. In this method of wrapping a D20, I've started with two 2-foot lengths of 16 gauge dead soft aluminum wire, and I'm going through with about 10 feet of 28 gauge parawire. All the links to tools and materials will be listed down in the video description below. And I've begun doing a little bit of a ladder stitch, so we can see here how these 4mm beads are lined up, and these are green aventurine, but you could use whatever you like. And then you can see here on the back side how that stitching is kind of happening. The way that I started this is I began by finding the center of my 28 gauge wire and wrapping 5 rotations around the 16 gauge. You can see kind of right there. And then I threaded on the 4mm bead, and I'm using them a little bit as a spacer to keep them equidistant, and then threaded through, kind of held everything, wrapped 5 rotations around the opposite side, and then just looped across the back, wrapped 5, threaded on a bead, wrapped 5. And so I didn't get it on video because at the time I didn't think I was going to make a tutorial out of this. Then I was like, you know, I think there might be a lot of different applications for this. So you can see I'm wrapping on, whoop, and sliding down the wire. There we go. Sliding on one 4mm bead and then just bringing it around. And I don't know if this is actually called a ladder weave, but that's what I think of, because I'm wrapping around everything. There's no figure 8 movement going between all the wires. It's all just one continuous. I'm always wrapping around the outside. 3. And if it's easier for you, you can just turn it over. 4, 5. I try to keep everything nice and snug as I'm working, then wrapping around both. And you want to be careful here to not do this number where you pinch it in too tight. You don't need that. So we'll take that out. Just kind of get everything nice, and you'll train yourself. You don't have to worry about the far ends down here, but for the next inch or so, let's try to keep it nice and parallel. So with this 28 gauge wire, I'll just bring it there and then put that bend in it. The parawire is great about staying where you put it. So then there's one rotation, and I'm just going to turn this around because I like to wrap on the wire that's closer to me. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now you can see that's still pretty spacious, so I'm going to just smush everything down in close to itself. Finding the end of my wire, threading on a 4mm bead. There it is. Pulling that all the way down. And again, lining it up. Because I don't want it to sit too much on top of the beads, but however it ends up, I just try to be consistent. Well, not beads. I don't want it to sit too much on top of the wire. Like, I don't want these parallel wires to get tucked up underneath it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now I'm just going to wrap around the back. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I had to err one way or the other, I would I'd rather it be looser than tighter, if it comes down to that. Sorry, really not good at words. And just take your time, be patient with yourself. You've got this. And so then we're just going to thread another bead on. And I think I'm getting to about the halfway point. So after I do this bead, I think I'm going to throw it across the room. I think I'm going to transition to the other side. Sorry, as I struggle with my beads. So there we go. We've got it positioned, making sure it's not too tight. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now I'm just going to wrap around to the back. I'm going to go ahead and do those 5 rotations just to get it established. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And so now we're just going to come flip it over to the other side, untangle any tangles that might have developed in our wire. And we can see it's time to do the across the back. The more you wire wrap and weave and do different things, the better you'll get at pattern recognition. And pattern recognition will really help you in deciding what to do next. So we're doing the other around the back one. So there's 1, 2, and you'll notice the way that I do this, that was 3, is I'll take it and I'm pulling it over, almost like I'm casting on and knitting, and then pulling it down, and then I'm taking and I'm pushing it down with my fingertip while simultaneously pulling, and that gets a nice tight wrap. So that was 4, bring it around the end, and 5. I'm going to zoom out so you can get a good idea, there we go, of what my hand motion is looking like. And again, it's all about the end result. It doesn't really matter how you're moving your hands. This is just how I have found is comfortable for me. And so you can kind of cherry pick and decide from my methods what might work for you, because you never know till you try. So just sliding that down. I'm going to get, yeah, go ahead and rotate it around. I'm just holding it with my finger. I'm going to go ahead and get these to where they're not pointing towards each other. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Bring it around, smush everything down. And this just by itself would make a really beautiful bracelet or part of a necklace. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to repeat this until we get the full diameter of, or circumference rather, of our dice. And if you're having problems determining what that is, I really recommend getting a ring mandrel, kind of eyeballing it a bit. I'm going to say maybe around a size 8 on this metal mandrel, wrapping a piece of scrap wire around. And that's a little too tight. So I'm going to raise it up to maybe a size 10. And that's, I'm just using that as reference. For y'all, it doesn't really matter. Oh, it looks like we might be, yeah, a 10 will do us. And on this one, I really wanted the 20 facing forward. So it looks like I'll need to open it just a little bit more. So maybe around about a 10.5. Or an 11, who knows. I'm just making this stuff up. So yeah, our 20 facing forward. And so from here, I'm actually going to snip on both. That's why I save all my scrap wire. You never know what it'll be good for. And so if that's the perimeter, or circumference, sorry, then we can take this and straighten this out And I'll actually be able to use this one piece as reference for all of the dice because they are the same size. So I'm going to want to repeat this weaving pattern to this length, which ended up being around 2.5 inches. Oh, 2 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to continue doing that off camera, and then I'll meet you all back here for the next step. Now that we've completed the full length of our weaving, you can see I undercut it by just a little bit because I felt like doing one whole more repetition would make it just a little too far around, and I would rather this be more snug than it needs to be than too loose. So keeping in mind the ring size that we had done on the mandrel, which is what, around an 11, I'm going to take this and hold it up and then start the shaping around. And I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to have these guys interlace with each other. I think for now I'm just going to have one go inside the other. Like that way it'll just go nicely around. You can see that gives us a really nice little bit of a pattern on the outside. And I want to see how well this will interact with each other. Let's see. So obviously this by itself is not going to be enough to completely hold the dice in, at least not in a way that I feel like is secure. But the sizing does look pretty good. You can see where these two here are overlapping. What am I gonna do? Well, what we could do is throw in some figure 8. So this one's coming from over, so I'm going to come in from below and do 1, 2, okay, I'm just going to leave it at the 2 and like a half just to get the wire out of the way. And then I'm going to come around here to the other side where you can see these two are kind of interacting with each other. And it's just coming around. And I'm going to go nice and snug. 1, 2 and a half. And so now what we may do is untangle the wire from what's going on. Yeah, there's no way that this would hold just like this. So I am going to bring beep boop. What am I going to do? I think I'm going to have it cross back over on itself just a little bit. So there's 1, 2, 3 with a question mark. Is that what I'm doing? Because I think what I might do is bring this guy down into a little bit of a spiral. Yeah. Okay. Again, I'm just making this up as I go, you guys. And so I'm gonna whip stitch around. There's 1. And beep. There's 2. Okay. And so you can kind of see I'm going to be building this frame out in each direction. Because again, I don't want to cover too much of the dice. It's very important that it is obvious that it is a dice. But also you could be doing this with like a nugget of a gemstone. Like pyrite would look really good wrapped like this. Kind of just fun, you know. But yeah, something that you want to hug around the edges. So I'm going to come through. Sorry, I'm holding the wire in my mouth. Sorry, client. I'll like disinfect it first. And just hook that through. And you can see I've come between those two beads. And this is going to have a little bit of like a decorative loose wrap to it. But we'll see how that goes. So I went in between those two, so now I'm going to come through. I just don't have enough hands. Okay, and feeding through, maybe. Right, there we go. And pulling through, making sure nothing's getting kinked up. And the nice thing again about these 4mm beads is they're really going to help us to keep everything nice and equidistant, in theory. So again, just making sure that I'm not tying a knot through itself. And I'm just going to continue all the way around like this. Like this truly is just a whip stitch if you're familiar with sewing. Just bending it a little as I go. And I guess instead of fighting to hold it in the whole time, I could just sit it down. What's it from Sesame Street? You gotta put down the ducky if you want to play the saxophone. I was never good at putting down the ducky. I really hope somebody gets that reference. It's like a Bert and Ernie skit, I think. Okay, so yeah, just continue whip stitching around. It's a lot easier, not gonna lie, without the dice in there. Now on the back side, whenever things start getting a little bit snug, we will have to leave the dice in there, but that's for future us to worry about. Now also here where I've stopped curving it around, that's another place where I'm going to insert the dice and make sure that it's still coming together nicely. Y'all, I think I like this. Right on. Oops, I've tied myself into a knot. There we go. So as we return to the top, and also what's helping me in my consistency with my looping is I'm making sure to always go onto the right of our back wire. If you can kind of see how that's inserted. And that's just, I feel it's helping me to keep my spacing. There we go. Yeah, we're coming around. to where we began. And then I'm going to leave this to rest right here while I flip this over and do this exact same thing to the other side. And right now I haven't really established which is the front or the back, so this side could fairly well be the front. So let me position this just so, just in case it starts to get really held in there. Yeah, so we're gonna wrap this around. And that looks like it would hold it. It's not the smoothest it's ever been. Yeah, I think with a little assistance that would hold it in quite nicely. So I'm actually gonna open that up a little bit though, because I do want to be able to get some of that initial wrapping. 1, 2, and 3 before things start getting real snug. Don't hesitate to use tools if it helps. Boop, boop, boop. So there's that. And also, while this is happening, ooh, it'll let me cinch it down. Booyah! Excellent. There we go. And it's just a matter of being patient with yourself and with the project, and just kind of letting it go as it's gonna go. Just layering these repetitious weaves all the way around. I'm thinking that this weave technique, though I haven't tried it, could also probably work on a marble. Or you could probably use it for a flat-backed stone. And I'm sure future Vaughn will decide to make a tidbit tutorial of this if you'd prefer a shorter version. I'm sure if it's been made, I'll have linked to it. If not, please check out my YouTube channel. I've got all sorts of playlists, and I actually have a whole tidbit tutorial playlist where you can find shortened versions of my full-length tutorials. Because I understand, you know, most people, you can look at something, some people, you know, especially most wire wrappers, rather, I should have said, can look at something and kind of figure out, oh, well, that's how they did that. And so you don't really need the full in-depth video, but my heart is always with the beginner, because it can feel so overwhelming and so intimidating to pick up this and try to make something out of it. Like, just being spoiled for choice. There's so many different stylistic options that you can do, and structurally so many things that you can do. It's like, where does a person even begin? So I want to help you guys with that as much as I can. And whenever you're first starting out or trying something for the first time, I know it helps me to meticulously see every single step, because then I feel like it gives you a deeper understanding of what you're doing. And the more you understand what you're doing, the more you can then use it as a foundation platform to leap off of in different directions and try completely new things. You know, whereas if you don't really understand the structure of it, then you don't really know how you can modify it while still keeping it structural. Like, I hope that makes sense. Whoop. Also, I do want to bring up, this is a question that I get asked frequently enough that it's worth bringing up. If you follow along with my tutorials and you would like to sell what you make, do it. You bought the beads, you did the time, sell it. You know, go out there and make your money, follow your dreams. I would ask that you're very open with anyone who, you know, asks you, hey, how do you do that? Be like, I followed a tutorial, whether it's my tutorial or someone else's. Just keep that information going, you know, pay it forward a bit. I don't know how many people I'd run into over my years of being a vendor and learning and, you know, just attending different events, how negative a lot of people could be and very hoardy of trade secrets and things. And it's like, it doesn't take any skin off my back for y'all to do well also. You know, like, I'm doing great. I want y'all to do great too. So, okay, so it's getting kind of snug here. There we go. Yeah, don't be afraid to kind of mess with it a bit. Oh boy, I do feel like I'm in just a tangle of vines with all this wire. The more I work with it, the kind of stiffer it gets, so the more inclined it is to knot and to kink up, which drives me bonkers, but it's okay. Patience. There we go. And I think I'm going to do one more stitch. Get that one kind of up and out of the way. Oh, come on. There we go. Excellent. Now, whenever I see it coming down into a loop like that, getting to know the behaviors of the pattern of the wire, you'll be able to anticipate whenever it's going to be kinking. So I kind of just get my hand in there to give it a little bit of structure. Okay. And so now from here, I mean, if a person wanted to, you could continue this same patterning all the way around. Like, you could do a whole nother loop, but I think it's in there. At least here on the front side, it seems pretty good. So I'm actually going to cut quite a bit off. Save that scrap. Move that wire off to the side. And I think I'm going to coil this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm going to coil it. Push it down. And if you get a little bit of like weird bumping and stuff, just brace everything and pull. This 28 gauge is malleable enough that it'll let you do that. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the reason you're getting bumping though is because there's going to be a lot of space in between the wires, so as you smush it down it gets looser. Oops, careful when you pull though. If you pull too hard, it's going to make things complicated for yourself. So firm but gentle. So to avoid the bumping, I just try to get a tighter wrapping. And the more you practice, the more you'll be able to have it to where they're landing almost directly next to each other, or at least enough that whenever you do compress it, no bumping. I'm not really sure yet what I'm going to be doing with this. I'm just kind of doing this because it's fun. Okay. There we go. And so now let's visit the back side again. And I'm going to see if I can't take this and cinch it down just a little bit tighter. Cinch, cinch, cinch. Really tightening that. Okay. Getting that wire out of the way. And so now while we're here, I am going to go ahead and coil this side as well. Okay. Compressing it and tightening it. And I am going to shorten this to only about 3 inches. Just if I can get my hand around it without having to dodge the end, I can go so much faster. And I wanted to give you guys a real-time experience of this, just to know how much time does go into something like this. Okay. Now I'm going to continue weaving around until we get to about centered up on the bottom, so like right there. Because I didn't really feel like going through and doing the complete, you know, whip stitch weave all the way around. I'm going to do a little bit more. And I've exceeded a little past dead center in the bottom, but I am going to come through, and if I can manage it, I want to sneak between these two wires. Oh, I don't know if I can manage it. Okay, so I might have to just hook through where it's a little bit easier. Yeah, that's way easier. Okay, choose your battles. And we'll pull that nice and snug. And that's just going to ground that wire to the frame. And then from here, I'm going to continue 5, until I've used up the tail of this wire. Sorry for the traffic noises. I've got the windows open because it's a beautiful night. And somebody's motorcycle sounds like a fart machine. And so I get kind of hung up whenever it's just a little bit on the end like this. It becomes a little bit more difficult to work with, so just keep going until you decide it's done. But I hate wasting wire, even if it's just a little inch of it, so I'm going to keep twist, twist, twist. Now also keep in mind, if you're using maybe a 20 gauge wire, it won't take nearly as much wire to coil around that as it will something that's thicker in diameter. Like, you know, this is being a 16 gauge. Just thicker wire means it takes more to go around it. So just touching, making sure that it's nice on the back. And from here, I'm going to take my round nose pliers, grip as close to the tip of the wire and as close to the tip of the pliers as I can comfortably. And I'm actually going to zoom this out just a little for you. Sorry, just a moment. zooming out so that you can see that hand motion coming around. And you can leave that like that. A nice secure back. And then we're still pretty nice and open on the front. So from here, I'm going to do a figure 8 bail, which yeah, I really like this. And we could probably get away with doing this without the beads, but I think the beads make it really nice and like a nice open space. But maybe a smaller bead or a flat bead. Ooh, they have some of those like little square beads that have 2 holes drilled through them. Those would look super cool on this. Oh, I want to get some of those so I can try that. Okay, so for the figure 8 weave, I'm going to pull off a full arm span. And then some, because I hate splicing in more wire. It's a vicious cycle. I hate splicing in wire, but I also hate wasting it. So it's like, oh crap, what do I do now? I'm going to come to the very tip of one of our wires, and I'm going to just hold on to a little bit of tail while I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wraps, and then I'm going to train this tail down. So it's 7, 8, 9, 10. Really what I'm counting here isn't dreadfully important, but for those of y'all who like to be precise and stuff, it's a pretty good idea. So yeah, just training down that tail, smushing everything in nice and tight. I really wish I could find my bigger bent nose pliers because it's harder to do this with the fine tipped ones. And then I'm just going, oh, and I wandered off camera. Let me zoom out just a hair for you so I stop doing that as much. I'm going to take this and I'm going to slide it all the way down to the base. And you can see how this is wrapping coming to the back side. I want it to wrap to the front side of this one. Just like that. And I'm going to go, there's 1, 2. And I'm going to flip it. And I'm going to go underneath. So you can see how that's making a little bit of a figure 8 around those 2 wires. So then there's 1, 2 coming below, and 1, 2 coming around, 1, 2 coming around, 1, 2. And I am going to just keep repeating this until I get about maybe an inch. It depends on how deep you want the bail to be. I'm actually going to bring them in a little bit closer to each other so we have about a centimeter of space between the 2 wires. And I'm only going to come out about an inch from where it starts. And then once we get out to that point, I'll meet you there. So we've gotten to maybe 3/4 of an inch, but I decided to call it here. And you can see I could open this up a little bit and have it be very airy and open, but I really like it nice and tightly compressed. I like the way that looks. So from here, I'm going to actually, boop, I'm just pressing with my fingernail, giving it a nice little bend. We could also use our flat nose pliers and give it a very clean bend. I think we're going to do that instead. Just again, whatever I decide to do, I try to be consistent about it. So there we have that. And now also, down here where they come together into a V, I'm going to grab right there and bend. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to grab right there and bend. And that way, you can see how it makes that little bit of a pattern. Well, that's going to let us kind of weave down to that point. And I'm going to offset it just a little bit to make weaving a little easier. and you'll see that's a problem I run into quite a bit. So we'll come around and I brace it with my fingernail and then bring it to there and bring it down. So there's 1 and 2, and I just keep up the practice of keeping it nice and snug. 1, 2, so I just focus on the side that I'm on, and then as I get there, 1, 2, and 1, 2, and I'm going to continue in this same manner all the way down. Now often on my expansion side looks nicer than my contraction side, so I'll often have the contraction side end up being the back. So it's none of us are perfect in what we do, and it's just kind of playing to our strengths. So I'm going to continue weaving this, again, just as densely as I can. That way it forces it to stay in its shape. And then I'll meet you guys back here whenever I get to that connection point. So I found this nice mechanical pencil that I'm going to use as a mandrel. And so with this section I want as the front, so I'm going to bend that forward just like that in relation to the rest of the pendant. And then I'm going to hold my thumb against it just like this. And I'm going to bend it around. Just like that. And then I'm actually going to come in here and pressing in with my fingernail, you could use your pliers. I'm just going to bend a nice little angle in it. And then just press that in. I'm actually going to use my pliers to bring that up into a sharper bend. That way it will fit in. There we go. And just like that. See how they've met together? And then from there, we can actually take our wire and just tighten it real tight around the neck of what we're doing. And you don't want to snap it. I mean, as strong as parawire is, there's only so much pressure it can take. I'm going to do 3 wraps. And then we can go ahead and slide our fancy mandrel out of the way. And you can see that made a nice little bail that we can kind of straighten up in line with the center. And I still have these crazy guys coming off the backside here. Oh, what are we going to do with that? So I'm just going to take this and do a few rotations. I'm going to trim both of these to just 3 finger lengths, finger widths, sorry, wide. At the time of recording, it's getting quite late, and I've only had like a sandwich and a cup of coffee today, so I'm pretty tired. So please pardon me if I start brain farting all over everything. There we go. But whenever I get into one of these workaholic moods, it's just, I don't know, I just run with it. There we go. That's nice and bound off. Wrapping just around one. And I'm going to trim that just as snug and close as I can. There we are. Save this wire, that can be used for something else. Okay, I'm actually going to change this to where I'm going to trim it to where they're both about 1 inch long, or from the crease of my knuckle to the tip of my finger. There we are. And now, using my round nose pliers, I'm going to take this and start spiraling it inward. Just like that. And I could have made this a little smaller too, I'm sure, but I kind of like that. There we go. And so now we're still left with this here in the front. And I'm going to spiral just a little bit more, or coil rather. Oh, my wire is getting tangled up together. Bringing it out until I have maybe 2 inches worth of coiling done on the core wire. Meh, 1.5 inches. There we go. Compress that in nicely. I'm going to, holding that, pulling it in just as tight as I can, I am going to trim just that tip off. And then with all of this 28 gauge wire still attached, I'm going to grab as close to the tip of the pliers and as close to the tip of the wire as I can and start spiraling inward. And at this point, everything that we're doing is just decorative fun, but do whatever you like. And I'm actually going to get, I don't know what I'm doing to that. Okay. We can rotate that off towards the front. There. And I'm just getting that bent around so that it'll sit like this. And then we can take this wire that's coming here through the center, and I'm going to feed it through to the back side. Hopefully through the wire wrapping. Will that work? Yeah, it will. Okay, cool. And I'm going to get in there with my little bent nose pliers, grab that wire that otherwise might have been pretty difficult to hold on to, pull until I make sure that the wire is not going to kink. Yeah, there we are. Y'all, we made a pendant. Well, not done yet. Okay, so now to get these to match, I'm actually going to push this through to the other side. Ugh, it's all kind of kinky and weird. My wire's getting quite brittle now. But that's okay. Oh, I just hit my head on the camera. Okay, I'm really glad I'm almost done with this pendant because I am getting sleepy. I'm going to open this spiral up just a little bit because I am going to wrap to secure this. There's 1 rotation, there's 2 rotations. I want to shoot for 10. So there's 3, 4, 5. Compress down maybe. 6. Yeah. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Sweet. Okay. Going in, just snipping that just as snug as we can. I thought I had those. Well, here's some other ones I can use. Smush that tail down to make sure there's no pokey bits. And then spiral this in just a little tighter. And there we are, y'all. We are done. We have wrapped a D20. Putting quite a bit of pressure. Yeah, it's in there. Sweet. That makes me so happy. I've never wrapped one like this before, and I think I really like it. You know, actually looking at this though, this came out really similar to a wrap I did almost exactly a year ago on a cabochon, but now you can see how it's modified for something much more three-dimensional than something with a flat back. And this would fit very nicely onto just about any chain or cord that you might have too. So again, here's it just from the front side, and there's it from the back. Hey you guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me during this video. I do hope that it was helpful to you. And here I actually have two examples. This one is the one we made in the tutorial. This one is made using square wire in antique copper with amethyst around the edge. So you can see that gives it some really nice effects. So stay tuned for more dice and slash 3D undrilled item wrappings, and thank you so much to the client who custom ordered these pendants for his wife. I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for the opportunity to get to make these for you. So if y'all enjoy my free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, as well as participate in my weekly giveaways, my digital download content, my monthly craft crates, all of the different things that we do here at Back to Earth Creations, please consider becoming a patron. There'll be links for Patreon as well as all of my social media down in the video description below, and I'll see y'all in my next video. So until then, happy crafting. Bye.